We absolutely love what we do. If you like what we do, why not buy us a coffee? Just follow the link in the description below.
Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile
will give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
How can I help you today?
Hey, I need to talk about my loan.
No problem.
So I got the email. Sandy Spring Bank is becoming...
Atlantic Union Bank. That's right.
And will you still be...
Your banker? Of course.
More branches and ATMs?
Way more.
Still community-driven?
Still live here, still give here.
Mobile app?
Easy. Everything right at your fingertips.
And what about my business?
Always here to help you reach your goals.
Sandy Spring Bank is becoming Atlantic Union Bank, October 2025. Same bankers you love with even more to offer.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Welcome to another edition of the TSS podcast, brought to you in association with Luke 1977 and Bowden and Dolphin, with your hosts Rob Carlos from Bob's Books and the legend that is Shaun Teal. He's here, there, and everywhere, and he's Tealey saying something.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the TSS podcast. It is our third one of the season, so we're rocking and rolling for the 25-26 one. It is, of course, abbreviated to the Tealey Saying Something podcast, and that is me, myself and I, and the excellent legend that is Shaun Teal. Shaun, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Rob?
Well, I'm not as good as you, and obviously this might be on YouTube at some point. But for our avid listeners out there, Shaun is topless, and I've just said to him that reminds me I've got to go and get some corned beef and some milk straight after the game. So he's been on one of his, I presume it's one of your free holidays off your brother-in-law again.
You got it.
Yeah, that is the third one this season, or the third one this calendar year, I should say. And he's just nodding there. Chris, what are we going to do with him? Chris Browne, our producer, what are we going to do with him?
What are we going to do with him? What can you do with him? Look at the state of him.
Look at the state of him. That's exactly what we said when he came on the pitch at Villa Park in his first game. Look at the state of this one. After we said, who? But we soon got to know you, Shaun, and you know we love you. Right, let's start then before we announce our special guest. Let's just make a start on some updates on our beloved AVFC. It's not going well again, Shaun. Last time we spoke was just after the Crystal Palace game, where we got trounced 3-0 at home. And I had a text off one of my Crystal Palace fans, mates, I should say, and his opening gambit was, can we play you every week? So, a bit of a bogey team for us. It hasn't got much better, Mr. Teal. Explain why.
No, not particularly. I mean, obviously we went to the new Everton Stadium at the weekend, and what was an incredibly boring game, to be quite honest. Me and the brother-in-law, who happens to be a Blues fan, we sat there, we watched it, up the Blues, and then we gave up with it because it was garbage. So, no, it wasn't a great game. We never got going. We don't seem to have anything going forwards. We don't seem to be a threat. And in fact, Everton were a bigger threat than we were. But, I suppose 0-0 away from home, clean sheet, defended well, to be honest. I suppose you'd take it on a normal run of games. You'd go, if you're away every other week, you'd take a point every other week away from home and win your home games.
Yeah, I was paying in particular attention to Jack Grealish when I was watching it. He looked like he was back to the old. I know a lot. He's divided Villa fans. I firmly sit in the I love him camp, and I appreciate what he did for us when he was a player. And obviously he was there since he was 6 years old. But you know what? He looked like he was really up for it in that, especially in that first half, and was their main playmaker, getting down the wings, and he was giving Catty Mash. I was going to say, oh, Catty Mash, Matty Cash.
To be honest, I actually thought Matty dealt with him fairly well.
What about Catty Mash?
Yeah, Catty did quite well as well. I think, Jack has been sort of on fire and looks like he's back to his old self. I mean, I watched the previous 2 games where he created 4 goals in 2 games, and he played really, really well. And they're not a bad side, Everton. They'll upset a lot of people, especially at home this season. So, I like watching Jack. I think he's exciting when he's in that kind of a mood and he wants to take people on and he wants to do something that's not quite the ordinary. That was Jack at Villa a few years back, and that's what I like to see.
Yeah, and he was getting stuck in and moaning and going down very quickly as he did at Villa Park. But I really noticed that when they were attacking, especially in the first half, he had 4 or 5 Villa players around him. And exactly the same way as the opposing defenders, when they took, he was great at letting Matt Target, get forward a little bit more by, holding onto the ball and having 3 or 4 players coming to him. Yeah. And I really noticed that that's what we did on the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we know he's a threat. I suppose in the back of everyone's mind, you're thinking, right, we're playing Everton. We usually do quite well. Or we'd always done quite well at Goodison Park anyway. We go to the new stadium, and the one person that will probably throw a spanner in our works will be Jack. He'll probably turn up and score a goal. They'll win 1-0. And I bet there was an awful lot of Villa fans felt that way before kickoff. He didn't have the control that we didn't let him have the control that he'd have wanted and Everton would have wanted him to have. But they were still a threat from the first minute to the last minute. They were a threat. But you look at the stats, and the stats, apart from our shooting stats, you look at all the other stats, possession and that, and our stats were pretty good as far as us and Everton go. So, I think at the time someone said after the game, it's a point, it's something to build on. And then of course we go to Brentford midweek in the cup, and he sort of obliterates that team and plays a whole different team. And
but it was a strong team, though, Sean. It was a strong team that he played, I thought.
Listen, they're all seasoned professionals. The only kid that ended up playing was the lad that came on second half, wide right, who's played, and he went to America and played a few games in America with us and played a few pre-season games. So, yeah, it's an experienced side. And we go 1-0 up, very, without really controlling the game. And we don't, that's the biggest problem for me. We don't look in control at the moment. We look like we could get a breakaway against us at any minute in any game. It's just the way we're playing at the moment. And we're not creating enough chances. Quite simply, we are not creating enough chances.
Did you know what to do when Harvey Elliott scored the goal? Because I was straight on to www.howtocelebrateagoal.co.uk. Because I completely forgot how to do it.
I sort of sat there laughing the way it went in, because obviously I felt sorry for the keeper in a sense.
And I did. Was it an own goal? I mean, if you could be pedantic about it.
No, because it's. I think the rule for an own goal is if it's on target when it's struck and it goes in via somebody else's aperture, then it counts for you. If it's going wide and it's a defender on the shin and goes into the goal, then it's an own goal.
Yeah. What did you think of the penalty shootout that we had? As soon as it went to the referee blowing for those penalties, I never, ever felt confident. How did you feel about it?
No, to be honest, neither did I. Penalty shootouts, I've been in a few. You can't afford, if you go in first, you can't afford to miss the first one.
Yeah.
because otherwise you're chasing your tail straight away. And that's what happened. You know, McGinn missed the first one, poor penalty. And then the only other one we missed really was Matty Cash's, which I didn't think was that bad a strike, but the keeper made a decent save. But it was one of those written in the stars, wasn't it? The keeper has an absolute nightmare. Ball goes through his legs, we end up 1-0. We make all the changes and bring all that Watkins and Rodgers and all that lot on. We can't break them down. We didn't look like really breaking them down. It goes to penalties, and then the keeper makes 2 saves that win it for them. How many times has that happened? You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he just looked primed to save a couple of penalties, especially after the first one that was missed there. Morgan Rogers, you just mentioned him there, right? I did the book launch for Martin Granger last weekend. I may have mentioned that I've got a book out from last week, but I'd keep that quiet, okay? It's like my charity work. I don't like to talk about it. And I was talking to Tom Ross, and we were talking about Morgan Rogers. And I said to him, what do you think's going on with him at the moment? And he said he's believing in himself too much, right? Is that a fair point, Shaun? Has he believed his own hype at this moment in time, or is he purely going through a bad patch? And if he's going through a bad patch, let's be brutally honest, apart from the Champions League games, he didn't have the great last half of the season, where he was very inconsistent and wasn't on the ball. What's your view on it?
And to be honest, yes, I'd agree with Tom to a certain point. And again, Villa fans have been on social media all last week about, you know, how can he play so well for England yet be so poor for Villa? For me, it's decision making. I think for whatever reason, his decision making over the last 6 months maybe has just been wrong. He's trying to run with the ball when it's not there to run with. He's trying to pass the ball when it's not there to pass. So, you know, it's an imbalance where he's getting the ball. He did it the other night. He came on, he made some great turns, got away from players, but then chose the wrong option. And football's all about options. You know, and he's struggling for form. You know, there's no two ways about it. He's struggling for form at the moment. And for me, at this point in the season, 4 games, we can't afford to carry anybody if they're not playing well. And you know, for me, put him on the bench for a few weeks. Have you been
on social media at all this week since the Brentford defeat?
But it was fairly quiet to start with. It was fairly quiet, so I didn't really see too much. And I have been going on and off bit by bit. So, you know, I'm on holiday, but I'm always on looking around and seeing who's saying what's saying who, you know. And I think, you know, there's a lot of Villa fans. I mean, there's a lot of Villa fans had a right go at Matty Cash again, and I really don't see that. I don't see that he's done much wrong at this time in the season. If I have one moan about Matty Cash, he doesn't get forward enough for me. He's great at getting forward, but he gets to that 30 yards from their touchline, and he turns back and comes back 20 yards. And, you know, I'd like to see Matty Cash do what Matty Cash did when he first came to the club, and that's take the fullback on. Get the ball in the box. We need crosses in the box. You know, pre-season, how many headers did Ollie Watkins score pre-season? Because the ball went in the box. All of a sudden now, we won't bother playing that ball in the box anymore. We'll just go back and back and back. And Ollie Watkins, to be honest, can't get a kick of the ball in most games. He's like a passenger because the ball never goes up to him.
Well, it's like what Andy Gray said on our previous show. Our goalkeeper and our defenders have more of the ball in the midfield than the attackers. So yeah, I'm struggling to find out why football is better these days when that happens. But maybe that's us, you know, that's an age thing for us where we wanted the ball played up to our attackers all the time, and that has changed a lot. I thought Amy played ever so well against Everton. I was glad to see him have a great game.
Yeah. You know, I think an awful lot of fans think to a point that he owes us one after what went on, after all the hullabaloo about, going to United, not going to United. Did it? Was it in his hands ever? Did it? What was said to have happened, him negotiating, did it ever happen? Nobody knows, and nobody will probably ever find out.
Correct.
But he obviously went to Argentina, cleared his head, came back, and to be fair, but for probably at least one save at Everton, would have got beat 1-0.
I agree.
So fair play to him.
Right, before we move on from our illustrious team, the reason why I cite the social media this week is it started Unai must go brigade, right? I'm a placid person, but when I see that, I just want to put my hand through all the cable channels and shake people for even attempting to think that. It's absolutely ridiculous. People are saying that if we lose to Sunderland, then he'll walk and all that kind of stuff. I think as a fan, and I'll ask our guest this in a minute, and we'll ask Browne this question as well. But do you accept, because I do as a fan, you have to accept three outcomes in football. And I know it's captain obvious and all that kind of stuff, but you either win a game, you draw a game, or you lose a game. And you've got to accept that's going to happen. So for me, we're going through a bad patch at this moment in time, and that will pick up, right? So there's no trigger happy, Unai must go kind of thing. Do you accept that as somebody who played the game at the highest level as well? Or have you just got win in your head? And maybe it's a thing that I've got older and I accept that these results aren't going to happen. Maybe it is. But what's it like as a footballer?
Well, as a footballer, you in your head you think we can win every game, but invariably, in your heart, you can't win every game. It's just not going to happen. You're gonna go to wherever, to Anfield, to the Emirates, to wherever, and you're gonna have a really tough time. And you hear a lot of pundits saying now it's fine margins between win and lose, or draw and win, or draw and lose. And it is, one slip can cost you. The Premier League is so full of talent now that one slip by a defender could cost you the one goal, and you lose the game 1-0. And it's that simple. Or one bad miss, one poor miss could cost you the win, and you end up with the draw because you don't score that goal. We're just in a position, and people have got to remember we're 4 games in, for goodness sake. We're not 24 games in. We're 4 games in. It's early days. People always used to talk about, you don't look at the Prem table till 5 games have gone. All right, well, we're not up to 5 games yet. And with there being so many good sides in there now, and even the promoted sides have done okay. Sunderland have done well. Leeds have done okay. Burnley have done sort of okay. I mean, really, they should have got something out of the game against Liverpool at the weekend. It was, but, these Super Six that get all the decisions, we can see why now, can't we? So, anyway, we won't go into that. That's a different show.
Yeah, let's stop being catty on that one. Let's go. Talking about managers that go very quickly. I think if Chris Wilder loses this week for Sheffield United, I think he needs to go again. Absolutely. I can't believe that. That's 3 times. 3 times he's been there in 5 years. Why is he in a broom cupboard and they just bring him out?
That'll be his first game.
I know, but
he's trying to be sarcastic.
Yeah, he's had a few beers. Remember, he's had a few.
Let's face it. I mean, when you look at results for teams, there's no way they could keep Sellers. 6 games in, they haven't got a point. They don't look like scoring a goal. Never mind. And then he starts fiddling around. He leaves the best player on the bench, or the best 2 players on the bench, and you think, what the hell is he playing at? I mean, as far as managers go, look at Birmingham City. I've read loads.
Do I have to?
I've read loads of crap about why their manager should go this week.
I've seen that.
Really? Because they're in our situation. They can't score goals at the moment. They're struggling to score goals, as we are. So all of a sudden he should go as well. He was the Messiah 3 months ago. What do you reckon, Chris?
No, I totally agree. You know what the old saying is, football players are fickle, aren't they? You know what I mean? But yeah, we're 4 or 5 games in. It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous.
Right, we're going to talk about the Championship a little bit more now because I'm going to introduce our guest onto it. But just before we do, on Sheffield United, I wouldn't be surprised if they're top 6 by the end of the season. In fairness, he has got a great track record of doing that for them. So,
and they've certainly got a squad that could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start looking at the bookies to see what prices are going to give me on that one because I do fancy it, which will make it slightly harder for our 2 other Birmingham teams who didn't score again this week. So I think that's the first time I've ever known it that Villa, Blues, and Albion all don't score a goal. Coming out in solidarity with Aston Villa. So thank you, West Brom and Birmingham, for that. Right, so let's move on to our guest of this week. We've had some illustrious guests since we started this podcast, which is almost a year ago now, by the way.
It is.
We in October, we are celebrating our first year. And this week, we've got a very fine journalist by the name of Adrian Goldberg. Now, when I lived in the Midlands, I used to watch his programs when he spoke about football and music, and I sat next to him. He doesn't know this, but we sat next to each other at a John Lydon Q&A session at the Birmingham Town Hall about 6-7 years ago, I would imagine. So yeah, that's my claim to fame, sitting next to him, and now I've got him on the show, so I'm very happy with that. So please put your hands together and welcome a fine BBC journalist, Adrian Goldberg, who was also a West Bromwich Albion fan. Welcome to the TSS podcast.
Hello, Rob. Thank you. Hello, Shaun. Hello, Chris as well. And I think, being a pedant, by the way, if you're picking up on that, 2 things you said, lots of illustrious guests. I noticed you didn't say, and here's another one. And in terms of being a pedant, I think it might have been at the old conservatoire, the one that's been knocked down now by the library. I think that's where I saw Lydon doing his Q&A.
Is that where it was?
That's my feeling, yeah.
I thought it was at... but I know you've got some great taste in music, mate, but I'll have to talk to you about that one of these days. As we are of the same age group. Chris and Shaun are well older than us. Well older.
Well, I'll try and stay abreast of new things as well. I'll do a show on Brum Radio, which I try and feature a lot of new music on as well. And I'll promote a few gigs and definitely try and stay in touch. I mean, being an old fart, it's difficult. But I've got a 10-year-old daughter, which helps, actually. So my Radio 4 Today programme habit is rudely interrupted at 7:45 every morning when we have to switch over for the bong competition on Capital. So I'm well up with Miss Sabrina Carpenter's and me Taylor Swift's.
I'll take it back. He is illustrious. He's doing shows on Radio 4. He is older than I thought.
Well, I do documentaries as a freelance on Radio 4, but I don't. The Today programme I just listen to as a listener. I've never quite been that illustrious, but I do programmes for File on 4 Investigates on Radio 4, and so yeah, but I also do other stuff. I make a podcast for the Byline Times and do a podcast called Where's the Money Gone, which he said shamelessly
is also a shameless plug. That
is also the name of my book, Where's the Money Gone? The Battle for the Soul of English Football. We can talk about that if you like, but we don't have to. I don't really mind. I'm happy to chew the cud about whatever you want to talk about.
How could we not say yes after that little bit? That was shameless times 100 plugging on that one. Yeah, let's talk about your book. Give us the full title of it. Where's the money?
Where's the Money Gone? The Battle for the Soul of English Football. And you can order it through Byline Books or ask at your local bookshop. That's the last plug I'll give for the title. The great thing for this podcast is that it encompasses events at Villa Park, St Andrews for your producer Chris, and at the Hawthorns for me. So it started, I did a football fanzine. Older listeners may remember a fanzine called Off the Ball, which came about in the mid to late 80s. And although I'm a Baggies fan, I was concerned about the state of football, and obviously there's a lot of match day violence around at that time.
What years are we talking there?
The first Off the Ball was in late 85.
Okay, or the dark year.
The year of the three Bs, Bradford, Brussels, and Birmingham.
Yeah.
Because a lad sadly died at St Andrews, you may remember, attended his first ever game when Blues and Leeds fans rioted.
Yeah.
There was Bradford, the Valley Parade, fire, and Brussels, which of course was the Heysel disaster. And kind of as a response partly to that, but then also as a response to that, me and my mate Steve Beauchamp, who has sadly passed away, he was a big Blues fan, he was later involved in the Tired and Weary fan scene. We said the way football's been reported, the way we as fans are kind of always depicted as knuckleheads and morons and thick skinheads, that's got to change. So although there was a lot wrong with football violence and so on, we also said there's got to be a different way of reporting on football, taking some of the administrators to task. Valley Parade happened, the Bradford fire, that wasn't hooliganism. That happened because a ground had been poorly maintained and the exit gates had been locked. And that was in a stadium, in a stand that had been condemned. How does that happen? So there were issues about how football was run. And really then, from then on, as much as I can in my various kind of outlets during my career, and for 10 years I hosted a show called 5 Live Investigates on 5 Live. Wherever I could, I'd try and do a football story, because in a way these stories never changed, of football clubs apparently being well run for a few years, and then some kind of rogue or chancer or merely incompetent person taking over and running them into the ground. And why did that pattern keep repeating itself? So that's the story I've tried to tell through the book, and I've tried to tell it through the experiences of fans. I'm not an accountant. I make this point in any interview I do. I'm not Kieran Maguire. I'm not comfortable with a spreadsheet. But if you read that a club's going to go bust, or that it's lost 30 million quid in a year, we can all understand that, can't we? Yeah. And so I just wanted to follow the story through the eyes of fans of why football, even though it's richer now than it has ever been, seems to have had over the last few years more clubs in financial peril than ever before. So there's a big chapter on Villa, the Tony Shah years, with my good friend Carl Chin, who plays a big part in that. And we speak to Keith Wyness about that. And you may remember there was a big Al Jazeera investigation into a guy called Chris Samuelson.
Yes.
He was the fixer who got Tony Shah to take over Villa. And he kind of admits in this Al Jazeera investigation that he didn't really believe that Tony Shah had the money to buy Villa. But he said, as long as he could, on paper, it looked like he could, he was allowed in. So, I'll follow that story. And Blues, you've got the incredible story of both Carson Young and then what came later. So all those sorts of things are going on in the book.
When it comes to what your family eats and drinks, your choices matter. You're the expert, because you know what fits your life. And getting it right starts with good information. That's why America's beverage companies are sharing more information about our ingredients at goodtoknowfacts.org. No spin, no judgments, just the facts straight from the experts for more than 140 beverage ingredients. Visit goodtoknowfacts.org.
How can I help you today?
Hey, I need to talk about my loan.
No problem.
So I got the email. Sandy Spring Bank is becoming
Atlantic Union Bank. That's right.
And will you still be
your banker? Of course.
More branches and ATMs?
Way more.
Still community driven?
Still live here, still give here.
Mobile app?
Easy. Everything right at your fingertips.
And what about my business?
Always here to help you reach your goals.
Sandy Spring Bank is becoming Atlantic Union Bank, October 2025. Same bankers you love, with even more to offer.
You mentioned obviously the start of the 21st century. If I look back, obviously you'll know more about this because you've wrote this book. But it seems to me that do you remember the Sun? Oh, I obviously remember the Sun newspaper. Do you remember Striker that used to be in it? Right. Well, they used to have. It was a cartoon based on yeah. And the owner of it was a guy called Eric Openshaw. And Eric was the local millionaire that had sold pork scratchings, right? So I often think back, if you go into the latter part of the 20th century, we had a lot of owners that were like that. And then the 21st century comes along, and Chelsea are bought out, and Manchester United are bought out, and the Americans and the Russians come in, and then towards the end of the noughties, the Chinese start to come in as well. So that affected, if I'm right, did that affect Birmingham, Villa, and West Brom having China?
Well, yes, it did. I mean, I suppose, you got the creation of the Premier League. I mean, Sean may have a very different view on this as a player. But, obviously the Premier League's brought a lot of glamour to English football and some of the best players in the world and so on. But, I think the Premier League was a kind of theft, really. I think it destroyed the solidarity of the Football League. I reckon the creation of the Premier League was a kind of theft from the rest of football, because suddenly these owners could see what was coming down the track, which was satellite television, pay TV and so on. And the owners of some clubs said, I tell you what, we don't really want to be sharing that 92 ways. We want to be sharing that just amongst the top half dozen clubs. They obviously needed a few others to join in so that they could create a competitive league. But really, that was the moment when English football, for me, went down the wrong track. That's maybe have a whole programme, a discussion about that. But from then on, I think English football becomes obsessed with money. And you've also got these political forces saying, let's welcome in, the country's bust. Let's welcome money in from wherever we can get it from. And the first wave of that is Abramovich. Then you've got, in more recent times, and with, I think, and I discussed this in the book, with the connivance of the government, you get the hugely repressive state of Saudi Arabia getting involved in Newcastle United. You've got the very repressive United Arab Emirates and Abu Dhabi getting involved in Manchester City. And there seems to be no off switch for the Premier League, no off switch for the British government in terms of where money might come from. As long as it's money, it's viewed as good money. And as part of that, then our clubs in the West Midlands get caught up in HS2. HS2 becomes a real magnet for Chinese companies. They see the potential infrastructure. China's mad on investing in foreign infrastructure. And so I think Albion, Villa and Wolves, less so Blues, which was a kind of special case, those clubs were attractive to Chinese investors because of HS2 and because our government was desperate to bring in overseas money and because the Premier League was desperate to get its hands on any money that it possibly could from any source.
So that's a really interesting point about HS2. Obviously, you've done your research on that. I never even thought about it in that way. But the downside to having the Chinese owners as well is that they basically couldn't take the money out. Is that right, Adrian? That because of the Chinese government, you spoke about governments there. Red tape dictated that money couldn't be sent over. Is that true?
Well, there came a point where it became very difficult, and I do tell that story really in the book, and don't worry, I'll share it with you now if it's okay. But essentially, the Chinese government, President Xi, is genuinely mad on football, and even before he became President Xi, he was trying to get China to be a force in world football. And then he becomes president, and he starts making these announcements: we're going to be a world leader in football, and the Chinese Super League is going to be developed. They created thousands of schools, or they announced plans to create thousands of schools, which are specialist soccer schools in China. And then, China's a bit like the way America's becoming now. You got to get on with the president, you got to get on with the party to get contracts and to get business. So you're not being told directly what to do, but you want to do what the president wants because that's the way to stay in. And so all these very rich people in China said, oh, yeah, we've got to have some of that. We want to, get involved in English football, which was seen as a world leader. Tony Blair had been over there. Cameron and Osborne were really all for promoting in links with China. You may remember President Xi went to Man City, to the Etihad. Yes. There was a famous picture of him with Sergio Aguero and David Cameron, and Xi's looking a little bit pained in this selfie that Aguero takes, but all promoted by the government. So the businesses pile in, and then about 2017, the Chinese government, which is far from stupid, realizes some things are going on that it doesn't like. What doesn't it like? It doesn't like the fact that you can buy an English football club, as in the case of Albion, for 200 million quid, and then it can get relegated. And that 200 million quid, it might only be worth 80 million quid or 60 million quid. Or in the case of Albion, when they were sold, I'm told just 20 million quid to the owner. The official sale was 60 million, but 40 million pound of that was honouring debts. So if you're the Chinese government, you're thinking, hold on a minute, why is all this money going out of the country? We've invested 200 million, 20 million's coming back to China. That's not a clever deal. And they also spotted as well, and I'm not mentioning any of our individual clubs in this context, just to make this absolutely clear, but they also spotted the potential for money laundering, for money that had been generated by nefarious means in China, then been spirited out of the country, invested in football clubs abroad, and the money being laundered. And that is specifically mentioned in statements by the Bank of China. So, so at some point around 2017, China starts saying, if you're going to invest in football, that's a kind of not a red flag, but it's a yellow flag, and you're going to need permission. So the weather changed from being very encouraging of investment abroad, especially in football. It then said, hold on a minute, you've got to be very careful. And I think Chinese investors had the frighteners put on them by the Chinese government. So, and the only exception to that, sorry to just finish this point, right? The only exception to that locally was Fosun at Wolves, because they're such an international conglomerate and so much money, they seem to be able to move it around with a bit more freedom than other clubs. But even Fosun now are really wary of catching a cold. They've said that they're going to focus on their core investments, and in no rational universe is football a sensible core investment if you're a conglomerate, so that's where we are. So our clubs have mostly caught a cold as a result of Chinese investment.
Why is Birmingham City a special case?
Birmingham City is a special case. Birmingham City.
don't set me off.
See, I was being serious there. That was but I could tell them too. That the shoulders were up.
Sean, would you like to answer that one? No. Birmingham City are a special case because even before the big sort of, for want of a better phrase, the Chinese invasion that it initially appeared to encourage in 2015. Blues had a Chinese owner, albeit that it was Hong Kong, which, had a special status, less so these days, but, was seen as, even now it's a little bit apart. So you had Carson Young, a man who already had a conviction for dishonesty, by the way, before he took over Birmingham City. No barrier to his ownership, because the Premier League said what he did, which was something about declaring shares on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. He hadn't declared them properly. They said that wouldn't be a crime in the UK, but it was. He had broke the rules in Hong Kong. So Carson Young was allowed to take over Blues, and of course he was convicted of money laundering. And I mean, by then, when he was convicted, Blues fell into the Championship, and he sold a lot of his shares, but he still kept 12%. And there's a brilliant blues blogger who I'm sure you'll have heard of, Chris, called Daniel Ivory.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And Daniel did some incredible detective work. And Carson Young had 12% of the shares in Blues, but was still running the club from behind his prison bars. And various friends, family members, business associates were installed in positions of power at St Andrews. So Blues are a special case because their Chinese ownership kind of predated the big Chinese rush to own English football clubs. And then there's a really weird bit of the Birmingham City story, and Daniel's brilliant at telling this in the book, is about when they got bought in 2017 and Young was, we think, finally out of the picture. There was a character called Mr. King. Have you heard of him, Chris?
Yeah.
Mr. King was supposedly the money, the power behind Blues, but pulling all the strings. And
How can I help you today?
Hey, I need to talk about my loan.
No problem.
So I got the email. Sandy Spring Bank is becoming
Atlantic Union Bank. That's right.
And will you still be
Your banker? Of course.
more branches and ATMs?
Way more.
Still community driven?
Still live here, still give here.
Mobile app?
Easy. Everything right at your fingertips.
And what about my business?
Always here to help you reach your goals.
Sandy Spring Bank is becoming Atlantic Union Bank, October 2025. Same bankers you love with even more to offer.
The NFL is back, and FanDuel's got everything you need to play your game, from same-game parlays to live betting. Right now, new customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. 21 plus in present and select states. 18 plus in Kentucky and Wyoming. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Radio Free Asia also did some great investigation into this guy. His real name is Wang Yahui, and he was a man who didn't like the limelight. He left China after a court case in which he was alleged to have bribed a senior bank official. The senior bank official was jailed for life. Wang Yahui was not tried and managed to get out to Cambodia, where he had friends in high places, and he had a whole network of companies that he was said to have been behind, but without declaring. These were companies registered in the Cayman Islands and such like. And he was the man said to be running Birmingham City. Now, we can't conclusively prove that, but there is a lot of circumstantial evidence. And Shabana Mahmood, who is now the Home Secretary, was the MP for Birmingham Ladywood. Even she kind of used parliamentary privilege to name him in Parliament as the owner of, or the effective owner, the man who ran Birmingham City. But she could get no answers from the club to her satisfaction either. So, I mean, the Birmingham City chapter is just crazy. And I'm not saying that Mr. King has got any involvement in Birmingham City now or Wang Yahui. It is interesting, though, that although they've got these very high-profile American owners who own St Andrews, the football club is still 51% owned by Birmingham Sports Holdings, which is not the American company at all, but is a Chinese company.
Is it really? Did you know this, Chris?
Yeah.
But the merry dance that the Football League have had and the Premier League through this, the system of regulation has just been so inadequate for years. And really, I suppose that's what my book proves, is that, or sets out to prove, is that, ultimately we just want to go and see 22 blokes or 22 women kicking a bag of wind around a field. That's what draws us to football. And yet over the years, so many fans have had cause to worry about the future and the fate of their football club. Players sometimes have not been paid, administrators have not been paid, and you kind of think there's got to be a better way of running football than the way we've been running it up till now.
Do you reference? I know you've spoken there about the our West Midland clubs there.
Yeah.
Do you reference Sheffield Wednesday's plight at this moment in time?
No, that kind of emerged really since I wrote the book. I mean, as I was writing the book, the Reading story was rumbling on, and I didn't have space for that. But I mean, as well as these problems, I should say no is the short answer. The long answer is to say that as well as identifying the problems, I'm a great believer in fan power in football, and I look at cases where supporters, again, through the eyes of fans themselves, where supporters have saved their clubs. And there's some great examples of that. Northampton Town would not exist today were it not for their fans getting together and creating a supporters trust. And they created the first supporters trust in the country. Even Leicester, a few years before they won the Premier League, their fans created the supporters trust to help bail them out when they hit a very rocky patch financially. AFC Wimbledon, a club who it was said by the Independent Tribunal when Milton Keynes were allowed to set up a new club called MK Dons. It was said that creating a football club in Wimbledon was not in the best interests or not in the wider interests of football. And their fans, Wimbledon fans, said, sod you, we're going to do it anyway. And not only did they prove that you could create a viable football club in Wimbledon, they did it about 200 yards from where the old Plough Lane ground was situated. So, it's the great stories of fan power. Blackpool fans who had terrible owners, the Oyston family.
Yeah.
You remember that one? Do you remember that one, Sean? When they got to the Premier League, the money that the club got from the Premier League was used by the Oystons to pay off their company debts.
Yeah.
Incredible. But the fans are amazing. Go on, Sean. Sorry.
All the Oystons did, if you spoke out against Blackpool, you were banned. That was it. That was it. You never came back into Bloomfield Road again. They banned so many fans at the time. It got ridiculous. But you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it was fan power that got the Oystons out, that forced their hand, really. And, of course, they did some underhand things anyway and got caught out a few times, wheeling and dealing in things they shouldn't have been. And it all came down on them massively in the end. And Blackpool's a totally different club now to what it was then. Not that I go very often because I'm not a fan of Blackpool as a place, never mind as a football club. But I've got a lot of friends that played for Blackpool earlier on, either before or while the Oystons were there. So I sort of know quite a bit of what went on in the club.
Yeah, the fan story though is amazing because normally as fans, like we did at the Albion, you shine a light, you hold up placards, you shout against the owner. Blackpool did the thing, and I remember this is just a beautiful line. I interviewed this guy called Tony Wilkinson, and we're sitting in a cafe in Blackpool on a blustery April day. It felt like November, but it was April, and over ham, egg, and chips. And Tony's there telling me this story, and he said, "Oh yeah, my dad made the ultimate sacrifice." And I'm thinking, blimey, what did he do? Did he jump in front of a flying bullet and catch it to save someone's life? No. His dad stopped going to Blackpool. That was the ultimate sacrifice. But you know what? When Albion were having their problems, I just floated the idea of, if our then owner, Guatran had taken more money out of the club, I said, how about it? Maybe we follow what the Blackpool fans did and have an organised boycott of the club because clearly nothing will change. And I got absolutely howled down for that. It really is an absolute taboo for football fans to boycott their club. But Blackpool did it, and it was, hugely successful boycott. And I think as a fan group, they stand apart with real pride because they never stopped following the club. They turned up every week. They had stalls outside the ground telling the away fans not to buy any food and drink or merch inside the stadium, and said, "We're still here. We still love Blackpool Football Club. We're just not going to put any more into your pockets."
And is that what has gone on recently at Morecambe as well, just down the road? Is that the same kind of ethos that has it been the fans that have done it at Morecambe, or are they just had new owners come in that
I think Morecambe again I did an interview recently with a woman called Tanya Ellsworth who runs did run the Shrimp Supporters Trust until recently, and the story I got from Tanya was that essentially, and in other reading around it as well, essentially that Morecambe had spent more money than they were earning. Now, I got criticised for that because people said that's a bit too simplistic, and it may well have been too simplistic. But, ultimately, there are a lot of football clubs who spend money that they haven't got, and I'm not a fan of that. And when clubs get into trouble, they then kind of appeal for a new owner, a sugar daddy owner. And I don't know what Sean thinks as a pro. I think there's enough money in football for clubs to run successfully and to pay very good wages to players without clubs having to run in deficit. Probably in the lower divisions, players would earn a fair bit less than they do at the moment. At the top level, you'd still have millionaires in the Premier League. But just say, that's it, you can't run at a loss. That's the deal for me. What about that, Sean?
You'd be surprised if these clubs we're talking about, your Morecambes and this, that, if you looked at their players' basic wage per week, you'd be amazed actually what they are earning. You'd be scared stiff thinking, how can a club like, and we'll say Morecambe just for instance, how can they pay their players that kind of money, yet they can't run the club properly? How can it happen? And that's what happened basically. You know, the players were on good contracts. You know, Derek, I know Derek, I played with Derek Adams at Motherwell. Derek was on a good contract. He'd gone back there to get them out the trouble they were in and kept them up.
Yeah, he was the head coach at the time, yeah? Derek, yeah?
Yeah, but they were on good money. But then all of a sudden, the money disappeared. They couldn't afford to pay anybody. So and as soon as that starts, then it all starts falling down because players' contracts are so tight now that if they don't get paid for so many months on the run, they're entitled to walk away. They can just walk away from the contract as free agents and join whoever they want. It's happened at Sheffield Wednesday this season.
Yeah.
The lad Smith that left, the forward, he walked out because they hadn't paid him, and the centre forward, can't think of his name. His dad played as well.
You're right. I mean, and some people, Sean, reckon that was part of Chansiri's strategy, was that some of the high earners, if they weren't paid, they'd walk out. From his point of view, that reduces his wage bill. You know, it's if you're looking just to kind of cut your losses and kind of keep the ship afloat, that's something that you might do. But I mean, I think that underlies it, isn't it? And I mean, again, part of the story of the book really is that, you know, these things have always been there in football, and football clubs have always overspent in the rush to be more successful. But I think it's been intensified by the creation of the Premier League, and it's intensified by not just the creation of the Premier League, but then also by parachute payments, which utterly distort the Championship. Clubs then have to try and compete, or want to try and compete, with the clubs who've come down, but who have parachute payments. And that kind of creates this mad spiral of chasing money. I did an interview the other week with a guy called Liam Scully, CEO of Lincoln City. And Liam Scully said they try and run Lincoln in a sustainable way. But then he said, nobody stands on the terraces and saying, we are the most sustainable football club in the league. You know, it's like, no, you don't. You know, he said, you know, fans go to football to see their team win games. And he said that at Lincoln, even though they try and run it as a sustainable club, their definition of that is that somebody has to write them a cheque for £3.5 million every year.
Wow.
That's just crazy.
Shooting back to the Morecambe story, you see, the problem with the way Morecambe's been run and the way it's got to the point it is now, where obviously they've got new owners, but because of all the hindrance and because of what had gone on, it so destabilised the club that they ended up with a handful of first-team players when they kicked the season off. So. And they were also 4 games behind from the start because they weren't allowed to play. They were banned by the National League from playing until all the problems were sorted. So they're in this destable thing now. So they're playing catch up. And you know yourself, if you're 3 or 4 games behind them and others have got points on the board and you haven't, it's the hardest thing in the world to try and scrounge them points back to get on level terms. Morecambe will have a really difficult season this year and be lucky if they survive, to be honest.
Yeah, well, the fans won't mind that so much as long as they've got a football club, you know, and that's the reality of where they are and where they've been. But you know, so many clubs have been through this, and even now, you know, we've got the regulator coming, and you know, I'm hopeful about the regulator. But you look at regulation in other industries. You know, would you go swimming down your local river? Even though we have a regulated water industry, not with your mouth open, you wouldn't, would you? So, you know, you've got to be, you know, regulation doesn't always work. I welcome it because I think truly the FA and the EFL have been AWOL for the last 40 years, really, in terms of regulating the game. And it's on them. But, you know, here we are. Let's hope the regulator can do a decent job.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left on this, and it's been absolutely fascinating listening to these stories. And Tealey, it's great to see that you've got some insight as well, living where you live and all that kind of stuff. Where does the book offer some kind of epilogue in terms of where it's going to go? Predicting, from those dark days to the 92 time when the Premiership started. Where do you think it's going, Adrian?
Okay, so there is an epilogue. The epilogue is in the Sportsman, a fantastic desi pub in West Bromwich on the High Street, where one of the organisers of the Action for Albion group meets me, and we celebrate the fact that Albion have then been saved by that time by our new American owners. But in terms of the bigger story, I go and watch Eintracht Frankfurt, and I speak to German fans and try and understand the 50+1 model. German football isn't perfect. Bayern Munich win the title nearly every year. And that's a kind of, one of the things I complain about in English football is how sewn up the big honours are, but, even more so in German football. But 50+1 in Germany works. And their fans say that they would sooner have the fan culture that German football has, the passion, the noise, and the sense of ownership and belonging that gives them, rather than having sugar daddy owners. German football isn't run on some kind of communist ideal. They still have loads of big money signings, and they have lots of big companies involved, but every football club is effectively 51% owned by the fans. So if there's stuff going on they don't like, they can say, we don't like it and we want to stop it. And just to finish, just one very brief example. When German fans were put through Monday night television, I mean, how horrendous is that for an away fan? They kicked off big time about it. They boycotted grounds. They blew whistles for the first 15 minutes of a match. And they were absolutely coordinated in their opposition to Monday Night Football. And Monday Night Football, because it's so rubbish for away fans, was scrapped in Germany. We are a bunch of pussies compared to German football supporters, and we will take anything that is thrown at us, it seems to me.
Bournemouth versus Newcastle on a Monday night. That's a great example, isn't it? Of how the fans are, are overlooked, and that has always been the case. Adrian, it's been absolutely fascinating speaking about the soul of football and where the money's gone. Just again, because you did it so well in that first segment, you've got about 30 seconds, and I am counting. Tell us where we can get your book from.
You're all right. You've got about a minute then, Adrian.
The book is Where's the Money Gone? The Battle for the Soul of English Football. You can order it via Byline Books.
Fantastic. We're going to have you on again, Adrian, because I quite fancy going more into this 51 rule and
happy to do that,
well.
Mate. Yeah.
Guys, do you agree that's a good one for us in the future?
I've got one question, Adrian. Can you play that piano?
Nobody can. It looks good though, doesn't it?
It looks brilliant.
Don't shoot him. He's only the piano player.
Hey.
Chris, I've got a question for you, Chris. Chris, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Can you turn that kettle
on?
Put your shirt on, Sean.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Do not put this on YouTube this week. Please don't. Right, okay then, guys. Our hour is up. It's been a fascinating show. We're back in 2 weeks. Chris, when does this show go out? I believe it's Monday the 22nd.
I'm going to work on it tonight because I'm away next week, but I'll get it out for Monday.
And where are you going? Blackpool again?
Almeria. It's not a freebie.
Well, nobody has a freebie except Shaun Teal.
It's going to cool down a bit next week, by the way, Chris. Just
yeah,
let you know.
He would say that
week.
to you.
Right. To be fair, it's been 31 every day we've been here, and we've been here 2 weeks now. So that's how good the weather is over here.
I'll tell you what, his brother-in-law is now in there looking and going, I wish he'd just
off.
Yeah, exactly. Right, okay then, guys. Show goes out on the 22nd. Adrian, we were going to have you back. We are going to have you back, and you are illustrious. Okay, maybe not the team you support, but hey, you can't win everything. Gents, it's been a great show. Speak to you soon.
Cheers, Ed. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
Up the Villa.
When it comes to what your family eats and drinks, you know your choices matter. You're the expert because you know what fits your life. And getting it right starts with good information. That's why America's beverage companies are sharing more information about our ingredients at goodtoknowfacts.org. No spin, no judgments, just the facts straight from the experts for more than 140 beverage ingredients. Visit goodtoknowfacts.org.
How can I help you today?
Hey, I need to talk about my loan.
No problem.
So I got the email. Sandy Spring Bank is becoming
Atlantic Union Bank. That's right.
And will you still be
your banker? Of course.
More branches and ATMs?
Way more.
Still community driven?
Still live here, still give here.
Mobile app?
Easy. Everything right at your fingertips.
And what about my business?
Always here to help you reach your goals.
Sandy Spring Bank is becoming Atlantic Union Bank, October 2025. Same bankers you love with even more to offer.
Tires matter. They're the only part of your vehicle that touches the road. Tread confidently with new tires from Tire Rack. Whether you're looking for expert recommendations or know exactly what you want, Tire Rack makes it easy. Fast, free shipping, free road hazard protection, and convenient installation options. Go to TireRack.com to see tire test results, tire ratings, and consumer reviews. And be sure to check out all the special offers. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.